And we'll be getting started here in about 1 minute.
That felt aggressive, I'm sorry. That felt, my pointing felt aggressive.
Dark hair now. Okay. It was blonde when I first met her.
Didn't want you to think I took over your spot, Mitch.
2 meetings in 1 day, Mark. Yay.
Aren't we
Not
all?
my first time.
Yeah.
Tribal council was every committee.
Everyone.
Oh, yeah.
It was a full-time job. It was every committee, so
Oh.
all day long. I was
Holy
in
cow.
these-
Oh, pretty good.
So many years here.
Well, it was a lovely sunny day
All right.
outside.
It needed to be warmer.
You ready?
I'm rocking shorts, actually. Yeah.
Gosh, you're
Okay.
a crazy person.
Welcome, everybody, to the study session of February the 13th. We have a few items on our agenda tonight to discuss. We'll start this meeting with I'm going to start this meeting with that we'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we are gathered is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land throughout the generations, and we appreciate their stewardship. We thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and inspiring us to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. And we're all going to move over to this meeting because it sounds a heck of a lot more fun.
They're having fun.
Chairman's mayor's statement.
Anyway, I bet you they got Valentine candy over there. Anyway, as we begin this meeting tonight and as we go through our dialogue and interaction with each other, may we do so with respect, dignity, patience, and charity toward all. So thank you. With that, we'll lead the meeting tonight, and I'll ask Ms. Shamrow, as she leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance.
Okay, with that, roll call, please.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
Commissioner Colbert?
Here.
Commissioner Werner?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Shamrow?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson?
Here.
Commissioner Stanley?
Here.
Mayor?
Yeah, I'm here. Okay, announcements from the city manager.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and City Commissioners. Over the next 3 months, there'll be a big push for the public outreach components of the master plan, the mobility plan, and also the TART trail that's being worked on. So that being said, a couple of the first ones are coming up on, and this is directed towards the tourism industry, specifically on February 21st. And that's 2 different meetings, workshops, one from 2 to 3:30 p.m., which is a Zoom meeting, and then the other one is from 6 to 7:30 p.m. in the evening to try to capture those that can't make it earlier, and that's at the district library.
Okay, thank you. City clerk, or deputy city clerk tonight.
Meetings scheduled for this week are Traverse City Light and Power is meeting Tuesday, February 14th at 5:15 at their Hastings location. The Board of Zoning Appeals will meet on Tuesday, February 14th at 7 p.m. in the committee room. The Arts Commission will meet on Wednesday, February 15th at 3:30 p.m. in the committee room. Historic Districts Commission will meet Thursday, February 16th at noon in the committee room. The Master Plan Leadership Team will meet Thursday, the 16th at 3:30 in the committee room. And the Downtown Development Authority will meet Friday, February 17th at 9 a.m. in the training room. Of course, we're always looking for individuals to express interest in vacancies on our boards and commissions. Several are Local Officers Compensation Commission, Brown Bridge Advisory, Election Commission, Housing Commission, Human Rights Commission. That was the fun meeting over there. Traverse City Light and Power. Please submit your applications. Community updates. Speaking of applications, applications for the City Academy continue to be accepted through February 28th. Applications may be found on the city's website at traversecitymi.gov/community/city-academy. The city will host community engagement sessions for the TART Improvement Extension Project this week on February 15th and 16th. Virtual and in-person options are available. Lastly, I would like to remind commissioners, staff, and members of the public to speak into the microphones so those watching at home and the recording of this meeting is easily heard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, tonight on our, I haven't thought about this yet. I'm hoping our affordable housing development discussion will take a lot longer. Is it all right with you if we go through a couple of other items first? We move it around a little bit?
Yep.
You all okay with that? I'd like to go through the presentation of the fiscal year budget first, audit. That's pretty dry.
Honorable Mayor and
Pretty
City
straightforward.
Commissioners,
Let's say that.
we have tonight Brian Postma, which is a financial department analyst, and I'll present him first this evening, and then working with our auditor. Brian?
Good evening, everyone. I was responsible for getting us prepared for this year's audit and creating our financial statement document. Did have a few hurdles to jump over this year with some staffing changes in the Treasury Department. We also switched online billing systems, utility billing systems. We collect credit card receipts was another change. And probably most unfortunate of all was I got COVID the day before Doug and his team were supposed to arrive. So that was a bit of a jump to handle, but I think we got through. We ended up with a good, clean audit opinion. And I'm going to let Doug go ahead and go through what he found.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for letting me go first. I won't make you page through every page of the report, but wanted to hit a few of the key highlights. So thank you for having me here tonight. First, as Brian mentioned, if you have your book in front of you, I'll refer to some page numbers. You can flip through if you care to. But on page 1 is the opinion on the financial statements. We come to do an audit. We study your internal controls, and we look at all the numbers in them or the material ones, and make sure that everything is being handled properly. And at the end of the day, we form an opinion on the statements, and you can see right on the top of page 1, the opinion is laid out a little bit differently than it has been in the past, so it's now listed first here. But it says, in our opinion, the statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the city. That's a good, clean opinion, and certainly what you want to have when you have an audit done. In addition to just a basic audit, we also expanded the scope of our audit this year to encompass government auditing standards. And that's a study of control and compliance, or a report on control and compliance at the financial statement level. That report is found on page 136 of the audit. And we also included an audit of federal funds this year, which is known as a single audit. And that report is on page 138. Both of those reports also were very clean. We didn't have any findings to report on the single audit. We studied or looked at very closely the Kids Creek Corridor program. So we have to select the federal funding based on certain criteria to look at. So, and that's the one that we selected to look at. And it came out very clean. So just, I'll hit a few of the financial highlights and the statements, but pages 14 through 16 are your government-wide financial statements. These financial statements are on the full accrual basis of accounting, which means that they're designed and set up to look much like a regular business. It's on page 14, and there's a couple slides here on the governmental activities, which is the left-hand column. First, I'll just point out at the very bottom of that page, you can see the left-hand column. There's an unrestricted deficit of about 14 million on the government-wide basis, and that's primarily because on this financial statement, the net pension liability of about 27 million is recorded, so that drives that into a deficit position. Here's a few of these first couple slides are, there we go. These are your governmental activities, and what governmental activities is all of the activity of the city with the exception of your business type activities, which are your water, sewer, and that kind of thing. So this is, this chart is showing you the various departments of the city within governmental activities, and it's designed to just show you the expenses, which are the blue bar, compared to your program or direct revenues associated with each of those departments. And you can see most of them fall short. And the reason for that is because the difference is made up with your property taxes and state shared revenue. So it kind of gives you an idea of where the property tax is being spent. Culture and recreation's a bit of an anomaly this year. There was significant grants given for Parks and Recreation for the Boardman Trail, and they get capitalized on this basis of accounting, so it's not an expense. So it looks like the program revenues are far in excess of the expenses, which is fine. It's just how this one is set up. And this is a pie chart of the revenues for all of your governmental activities. This includes your state shared revenue, property taxes, your Act 51 street money, all that kind of thing. I kind of compared this graph to the pie chart to last year, and it's a little messed up because of the capital grants, which this year comes in at 19% of your total revenue. Normally, or last year, this was at 9%. So that's a big chunk. And then property taxes went from 57% down to 51% because of that, but still about half of your revenues are coming from property taxes. And then governmental activities revenues here, this is just another look, the same pie chart, but on a more historical basis. You can see property tax, the one way on the right there, has been steadily increasing over the last 5 years. Capital grants there, like I mentioned, right in the middle, is a great big bump from what it has previously been. So the city did a good job in gathering up grants for some of these projects. And this is general fund. I'll get to general fund in 1 second. So pages, let's go to page 108 for the general fund. If you are this is your budget to actual statement for just the general fund. And this is typically what you look at when you look at your normal activity of the city throughout the year. But it came in for the year with an increase in fund balance of about 1.2 million. So your ending fund balance is just over 10 million in the general fund. And I should mention that the general fund, as I report it, it's called on a GASB basis because of a GASB that requires you to combine a whole bunch of other funds. I believe internally you report the general fund separate from those other funds in your monthly statements. So I mention that every year, but just to make sure.
And I haven't checked, but that difference of the two numbers is in your, under your summary of significant county policies?
If you look at just the general fund as it's reported internally, it is on page 112.
Okay.
If you want to see how the general fund alone is reported.
I guess that's a question that we can have. We'll get staff to tell us, but anything over 20% is now excess, and we have to figure out how we're going to spend it.
Yeah, so
Future capital projects.
I believe you finished the general fund as a percentage. I know 20% is the policy, but
Yeah.
I believe you're at 26%, 29. So,
What is it?
29.
Healthy.
So good, you're in good shape.
Okay, so we're going to need that number sooner rather than later, so you can bring it to us, sir.
So then this is just a kind of a picture historically of the expenditures by the various functions within just the general fund. You can see the things that really drive these expenditures for the most part are different capital projects within the different functions. So you can see culture and recreation this year, for example, is bumped up a little bit. And the big number there, public safety, which is police and fire, that's pretty steady from year to year. So. And then here's your general fund balance. So the blue line is your internal fund balance, and the purple line is what we call the GASB 54 fund balance, which is the combined one. Just over 10 million for the GASB 54, and about just over 7 million for the internal fund balance, as you usually look at it. At 7.2 million. Okay, so the only other things I wanted to mention were the enterprise funds, which are the next couple pages. They're on pages 21 and 23. I wanted to look at your wastewater and your water funds. You can see on the income statement side, the change in net position is positive, and that's in both these funds. The thing I really wanted to point out on these funds is you need to have a good positive change in net position, because that has to also cover your debt payments and then any capital outlay that comes there. So in fact, in the wastewater fund at the end of June, which is when this is reported as of, your cash position was about $3,000 in a fairly substantial, $5 million operation. Water fund was in much better shape. I don't have it written down, sorry. Yeah, the cash in the water fund was about 778,000, but there's also some investments in there, so. Those are the things I wanted to point out. I'm certainly happy to address any other questions, or I want to make sure that anything you noted in the statement I can address.
I would advise anyone that wants to really get into the audit, I mean, if you like looking at numbers and stuff like that, or if you're having a hard time sleeping, either way, please read page 4, which is the management's discussion and analysis at some point in time. And then also read pages 29, which is the summary of significant policies. Between those two items, they should tell you everything that happened in the last fiscal, in this particular fiscal year. Then you can go through all the charts and everything else you want to read and fall asleep. It's it's written in an account at ease. So there you go. Thank you.
I'm going to give a quick comment, somewhat tangential, so thank you as always for your presentation. I would go against my colleagues' comments that it's dry, but
Yeah, but it's interesting.
I think we appreciate it. Yeah, it's interesting. But I'm going to take this opportunity because I was going to write an email, so why not say it publicly? But side note, but mentioned was that we've moved to electronic billing now, and I had a text from my next door neighbor at 9 o'clock last night saying, I just got to say, wow, I'm so excited about this electronic billing. It makes it so much easier. So Brian and Jana and your whole team, I just wanted to pass that along publicly because I know how hard you all worked on that. So thank you for that, and give you a little public praise there on it. Well earned.
Okay. I think this is on our agenda, I think, for next week, so you can formally accept the audit. So, okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Yeah. Party time.
I think the next one, that's going to be hopefully fairly quick is the county facilities plan. So
Right.
if we can't go through that one,
Certainly,
or at least the part of that, and then the other ones are going to take a little longer. So thank you.
we have Penny Hill, Assistant City Manager.
Hi, Penny Hill, Assistant City Manager. Can you hear me okay? Is this on?
No.
I'll try
Is the
to,
mic on?
not at all.
Well, the mic's for the broadcast, isn't it?
I'll go up here.
This Ben just wants to think he's.
I think it's his account.
So as you might know, I'm Penny Hill, Assistant City Manager, and for the past year or so, Grand Traverse County has talked about doing a facilities master plan with like 10,000-foot view of operational efficiency and how the county manages its business, and would it be better to combine operations in a certain location or split them off? Is it worthwhile to keep on sharing space with the city, that sort of thing? So the city asked the county if we could partner with them on this because we do share the governmental center space. We share space at the Fire Station 1, and we share space at the Law Enforcement Center. So in order to move this project forward, the city and county jointly issued a request for proposals to engage a consultant to help in the project. And an RFP was issued December 21st, I believe. It was due January 10th. We did get 2 proposals, one from Tower Pinkster and one from C2AE. The Tower Pinkster one was in the neighborhood of 99,000, just shy of $99,000. The C2AE proposal was about 150,000 over that. So we did interview Tower Pinkster, and we'd like to move forward with this project. It would involve engaging in an intergovernmental agreement to share costs on a proportionate basis, and we're working on that right now, working on that agreement. We would like to engage Tower Pinkster as the consultant, and the city buildings that would be, some of the city buildings that would be evaluated are the governmental center, the law enforcement center, the Fire Station 1, the DPS complex campus, Carnegie Building, Opera House. I can't think of any more, but a number of the buildings. And some of them have also included a highest and best use component for it. So in other words, if the governmental center, for instance, were to have a highest and best use for redevelopment for something else, then that would be part of the report. Chris Forsyth is here. He's the lead for the county. I'm the lead for the city on this project. And we plan to bring this to the City Commission at this coming Monday's meeting to ask for approval on both hiring Tower Pinkster and approving the intergovernmental agreement for cost sharing.
Penny, on your table that you had in Appendix 1, there are some items that are there in red.
Yes.
And I'm not sure that all of these are what we're going to share, but it's like you have the Front Street offices. It says city on there, okay? I guess that's because we still hold the deed.
Yes.
I don't know, okay. Governmental center, which the city and county are going to share. You have the law enforcement center, county and city. Then you have the prosecutor's office. You have that in red. Why is that one in red?
The items that are shown in red are the ones that we asked for the highest and best use analysis.
Okay.
So that's all that is.
All right, okay, I missed that. And what's the city's share of this going to be? I know I saw the table when it was on the county's agenda, so.
The city's share will be in the neighborhood of $30,500.
Okay. I think it's a wise choice to move forward with this. And I know I talked to Chris a little bit to see if he can help us to move along the fire stations a little quicker, and at least to get us some real good rough numbers. I know it may not be complete, but anything y'all can do to move that along, it would be appreciated. So, thanks.
Okay.
May I
Any
ask
other
my question?
questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I have a question about this. We sometimes run into issues of what we think of as a priority for updating a building or space is not a priority for the county, and we're a very fractional owner on the joint buildings. When we're looking at this analysis, are we going to be looking at not just what we're saying here is the cost analysis for the space, but what potentially the city could get if we just went off on our own on some of the spaces? Clearly, things like probably law enforcement, the Gov Center, we're going to stay joint on, and that makes sense. But some other things, or maybe even some of the ones I've listed and some of our departments within them, make sense to split out. But is that going to be part of the analysis on our end, or are we just going to kind of be looking at what do we want to do with these buildings, and we're going to split the cost just like we always have been?
I guess I'm not really sure what you're asking about by going off on our own.
Like, is part of the analysis for us going to be, we can pay to remodel, and I'm just using the governmental center before anybody panics, I'm not saying the city's leaving the governmental center, I'm just using it because it's an easy example. Let's say we look at the governmental center and we decide, actually, yeah, we'll own a third of this building with them, not even a third, it's what, 26% or something?
Yes.
But because this we feel like needs to be more nimble, what would it actually cost us to go somewhere else with that office instead of leaving it in a joint office with the county? So is that going to be
Okay.
part of our analysis, or are we just assuming that everything that's together now should stay together and we wouldn't ever separate them?
No, that's not, we're not having any preconceived assumptions.
Okay.
So if it makes more sense, we're actually looking at it more operationally than current use. So say, for example, does it make sense for the sheriff and the Traverse City Police? Does it make sense for them to remain together? Or does it make sense for the police to go with fire, for example? Not saying that that's something that will happen, but it's that kind of an analysis.
Okay, great. That's what I was curious about.
Okay.
Do you know what the timeline would be on the analysis?
Yes, the goal is that the final report would be delivered by the end of November 2023.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Hang on. Okay, any other questions for Penny? Okay,
Maybe it's in the finer details of their experience or in attendant documents, but do you know the outcomes of facilities plans that this firm has, or that have, do you know the result in terms of governmental reorganizations or other facilities changes of facilities plans that have been the product of this firm before?
Well, I think a lot of that is a function of funding, because I know some of them have been, a lot of them have been taken through to completion, but I don't know about all of them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
any other questions for Ms. Hill? Okay, I'll open up for, saw a hand raised, I'll open up for public comment. Come on up, ma'am. You need to come up to the microphone, please. 1 second.
We ask that you,
The rules for public comment. So, you know, ma'am.
we ask that you state your name and address, indicate that if you are a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time is elapsed, the timer will beep. And finally, we request that all language be respectful to all parties.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello. My name is Shannon McGillivray. I live in Garfield Township, and I am a dweller. And my question was in regards to the City Opera House. How is that joint? I was confused when that was indicated in the system.
It's not a joint, it's a city-owned building.
It's
Oh,
a
okay.
city.
So it's just under our purview, not the county's as well.
Oh, okay. I was just confused when that was like listed as one of those.
It's a city asset, not a joint one.
It's a joint study that we're looking at, and
Right.
we're looking at the portfolio of all city properties, all county properties, and those jointly.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. All right. We got the two lighter ones done. Okay, the next one, I'm going to go back up to the affordable housing development discussion. And who's the panel that's going to come up here and present?
We don't have a panel.
Yarrow.
I'll go ahead and introduce them all. We've got three.
If you all don't mind, I'm going to think it's going to make it easier than all of you standing up here one at a time at the mic, or however we're going to do this. There's no point in you standing up. Trying to figure a way that they can be more comfortable and we can share in the discussion here.
Shift everybody down like 3 seats?
What?
Yeah, but nobody can be mic'd if we do that. Richard, can I ask a question? I don't mind if we end up doing it this way, but looking at who's here and kind of the put together on this, I kind of was I'm hoping we will still do a larger panel discussion like was our plan. So
Yeah, also too, but we'll see what this one does. But I was looking at this to be more of a across the table around this, and we can have a dialogue instead of, I don't know if you're planning on just making a presentation or what's the plan here?
I have three people that are subject matter experts to come in and discuss with you some of the issues that they're addressing right now, as well as some of the challenges that they address and are addressing by providing housing within the area. So those three individuals are Yarrow Brown, who is the Executive Director of Housing North. We have Tony Lintick with the Traverse City Housing Commission, And then unfortunately, he was, had an emergency come up, but Craig Patterson from WODA, who is here via Zoom, but he's had to respond to an emergency, but is able to attend this evening through the process of Zoom. So we were going to start with Yarrow, and then Tony, and then Craig to go through the different things and allow them about 10 minutes to speak of some of what the operational aspects that they're working on, and then answer questions of the City Commission. And the 10 minutes each per presentation.
Okay. Then we'll start with
Yarrow Brown, yeah.
Brown.
It's the echo from Zoom.
Hello. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm just going to give, I guess, a few highlights, and then feel free to, ask me any questions throughout. But first of all, I wanted to thank you all for what you're doing already to move the needle on housing in your community, both through public and private options. And I think including a diverse amount of housing in our region is really what we need, and you're really working to address that. I do just like to provide the context of numbers and say that in Traverse City, a target market study did show that you needed about 1,100 rental units and 264 sale units. And for the rental units, about 87% of those were for rents about $1,000 a month or less. So as many of us know, it's impossible to build affordable housing right now for less than about $200,000, or housing in general for about $200,000 a unit. It takes time, this work is slow, and while a lot of projects progress is being made, there still is a lot slowed down, and many projects are stalled due to lack of funding gaps and other reasons. I also just wanted to point out that in our region, real estate prices have grown twice as fast as wages, which is contributing to the numbers as well, and just the sheer need for a range of housing options in our region. I think you all received my email about the new housing tools that did pass the state legislature. So I just wanted to highlight those, and first of all say you're really in a good position in Traverse City to use these tools, as well as in your partnership with the county. You have a land bank, a brownfield redevelopment authority, an economic development, is it a coalition, committee, corporation? Anyways, you have some real amazing tools to use, and we hope these additional 4 tools will be something that you'll embrace. I won't go into a lot of detail, but I can answer some questions about those. But on the 24th of February, the Housing Michigan Coalition is hosting a webinar to go into the details of those tools. 2 of them are expansion of the existing tools, payment in lieu of taxes and neighborhood enterprise zones, and then 2 are actually new tools that have been created for housing. And we're going to learn more about those tools and make sure that your community knows how to use them and be a support for that. We are also going to host another webinar for Northwest Michigan folks about the Housing Michigan Coalition tools on March 13th, but that may change, so we'll let you know for sure about that. So really the highlight of these tools is it expands existing tools that were for only specific communities, and then expands the options to support housing projects up to 120% of the area median income. So we have these tools, we're going to help everybody learn how to use them, but we still do have significant funding gaps. So a lot of the work at Housing North is to work on both the regional and statewide level to make sure we're advocating for any changes that are happening with ARPA dollars or resources do come to Northwest Michigan. And we make sure that we're that voice or collective voice speaking on behalf of Northwest Michigan. The other thing I just wanted to mention, and I think you saw another email from me, is that we're updating our numbers. So we're getting our housing needs assessment. We're right now in the stakeholder and employer survey gathering data for that assessment, and that will come out in May of 2023. So of Traverse City, this is countywide, so we're going to get an assessment for each county. If municipalities that are greater than population 3,000, so Traverse City, do want to dive in deeper, and of your own specific study, we do have an add-on option to do that. So you can fill out the survey, contact me, and we can talk more about that. So I'll turn it over to the actual experts who are doing the housing, and then be here as a resource for any questions. Thank you.
Next, we have Tony Lintick, who is the Executive Director of the Traverse City Housing Commission. Tony?
As I've told many of you in the past, I like giving very long presentations so I don't get invited back.
No such luck, Tony.
I didn't, yeah. I did not understand that we wanted to do more interaction after talking with Marty on Friday. I did put together a presentation that can go as long as or short as we need to, because I usually try to highlight a couple things. I want to take a few minutes to talk about who we are. It's always good to kind of, for anyone who's new, doesn't understand how we exist and what we do. I want to talk a little about some of the issues that are going on in the community, and then I do want to spend just a quick few minutes on a couple of projects, because I want to give some updates and hopefully maybe even get some help from some folks that might be out there listening. So we were created by City Ordinance number 105 on October 3rd, 1966. We are what they call a component unit of the city of Traverse City, sort of arm's length away, I think down the street and not around here much. But we were created in the 1960s, the same year MSHDA was created, and if you think about what was going on in the country, HUD was created, even though the state law that we're organized under is from 1933, Housing Facilities Act. But the state, the city, and Washington, D.C. were getting ready to do, a lot of housing, or at least have this conversation, and all of us were created so that we could talk to each other in a lot of ways. First thing, this community did was try to solve a housing problem for low-income seniors. That's what the organizing principle was. HUD was created because so many seniors were living in poverty in the early 60s. Some of the data that came out that almost 40% of America's seniors were living at or in the poverty range. It was determined that wasn't acceptable. HUD was created to try to address that and has been working on a number of different programs, developing programs ever since. In 2015, a strategic plan was created with the Traverse City Housing Commission. That's exactly the year I started. And by the way, I interviewed, my final interview for the job was on Super Bowl Sunday in 2015. I was offered the job right before kickoff on Super Bowl Sunday. I'll never forget it. And I started the following March. A couple weeks later, I started in this job. One of the first things we did was start working on a strategic plan. We changed our mission and vision. We had been a housing commission that had been running some great programs, but that's about all we were doing. We were managing our assets and running some programs, and the city really wanted a lot more out of its housing commission. So we tried to answer that with this strategic planning. We created our vision. You can go online and read it. It's much longer than this, but it's basically we want to be viewed as champions of affordable housing. And we changed our mission, and I like to say this is the shortcut of our mission, to create or cause to create as much affordable housing as possible. Our recent efforts are we're trying to operate in this new environment that there is a lot of conversation about affordable housing. There are a lot of new funding sources, and it seems that anyone with an idea is trying to create a new program with new funding resources to help solve the problem. And I'm not so sure those programs are going to articulate with the other programs that so we're in a kind of a wild, wild west of investment that might be going on where this program can't overlay on this program at all, but we're trying to fix that with some of our advocacy. We are currently working on several development projects, including a major rehab of our main asset, the Tower downtown Riverview Terrace Apartments. That is underway as we speak. I'm not going to get too much into the next couple slides, but how this is available to you now that you guys will be probably email this or share it somehow. We kind of operate about affordability for families, whether it's an individual or a family or a household of any kind. That is usually 30% of the take-home pay, that wage or monies that are earned, to be used for housing and housing expenses. That includes utilities. So keep that in mind. We always have to consider that utilities are part of the equation. And we generally think about a third, 30%. If anyone is above that, they're considered house burdened. We are always talking about area median income, and in this region, this county, for a family of four, we're talking about $88,500. That family, they're all in. Housing costs should cost about $2,200 per year. But I always argue that that's not a real family. We don't have these kind of jobs in abundance here that pays $42 an hour or above. Or it could be two people working at $22 an hour each. and having some children. Usually it's somebody's working a full-time job, someone might be working a part-time job, and they're somewhere in that range. But our numbers are a little skewed because of the way that our population earns money in this way. Our economy is a little different than people who live here. We have two traditional main sources in our economy. We have some light manufacturing, but we are a tourism economy, and we are an agriculture in this region. There are a lot of efforts to try to change that, build up the manufacturing, which are great, but you don't see a lot of jobs advertised at $50, $60 an hour. Get you at that AMI perfect station. I would point out that we've heard of, Yarrow was talking about statistics, but the one that's really interesting here is how wages have risen in this region recently, but rents have risen at a much faster pace. And that's one of our other key problems, is that I've seen rents triple in some communities, and that's just, because of the nature of who might be moving here and what they can afford. I'd like to point out that at $20 an hour, one would earn just under $42,000, which puts you in the very low income bracket of a family of four in this region, with our area median income being so high. Housing costs need to be under $1,500 for that family, and I always ask people, where does this family live? And this is double the state minimum wage. It just went up to $10.10 an hour at January 1. And what if you're a working class
Tony?
retiree? Yes.
You're saying that $20, they make under $42,000, and their housing costs cannot exceed 30% of that.
Shouldn't.
They would be house burdened if they're paying over $1,050 per month.
Thank you. Just make sure I appreciate that.
Yep. What if you're a working class retiree? And I spent a lot of time thinking about the seniors in this community. After a lifetime of work, you have Social Security payment paying most of your expenses. You are extremely low income, and you are earning below $18,600 per year. The average Social Security is $20,200. That's if you've contributed your whole life. Your housing costs need to be under $500 per month to be affordable. I want to ask where this retiree lives, and always ask the question, do you think more and more people are going to be retiring anytime soon? I think we know the answer to this. If you spend any time working with either workforce households or senior citizens, we can easily see that we have a problem. And as you know, admitting it is a way to start working on the solutions. I always like to point out, and I just saw Housing Next started talking about this, I think this week too, for Kent County. Between 2010 and 2020, Michigan had the second slowest rate of population growth in the U.S. It's at approximately 2%. It was like 1.9. But not this county. We grew 5 times that rate, almost 10%. In 2021, the state of Michigan lost population, and again, this county did not. People want to be here. This is great news. But people moving here of means, and their households are squeezing out a lot of the other folks seeking to be in the local housing market. Our region continues to suffer from a lack of workers, and those are not just in the service economy. Teachers and nurses are struggling to relocate to this region, especially if you're just out of school, newly minted from the colleges, and you want to move here. You don't have sort of a family tie here. You're going to struggle to find housing here. This part is not great news. I started to talk about economics to a lot of people that I talk to, and there's something in nonprofit world called market failure is one of the reasons that nonprofits exist. But it's a simple question. If supply and demand are out of whack, we have something of a market failure if there's no natural reaction from the market to solve this. People have been screaming for affordable housing for a long time, and there has not been a quote-unquote market solution. So I don't think we can actually wait for one. It costs a lot to make affordable housing. Don't ask me why. That's another 2-hour lecture probably. But we're not allowed to take shortcuts. We have to do all the soil analysis. We have to, pay all the right wages. We have to track everything that we do. And we have just a ton of soft costs. And I know Craig can share in some of that pain and tell you those war stories as well. It's just not easy work. And that's why we end up with $300,000 per unit development costs, because it's required work based on the funding sources that we agreed to accept. Shifting policy focus is hard to predict, and affordability is seldom the primary focus of federal and state housing policy. This may be changing. Truly affordable housing only exists as a result of mission or a mandate. A nonprofit or a church works in this arena utilizing a limited supply of funds from certain programs. There are some for-profit players, but they are usually large, regional or national entities, and they are not really connected to any one local community. That is not a knock on them in any way, but it's part of being part of community development versus just straight up affordable housing development. You can keep that in mind. There's reasons some people do this work, some organizations do this work. It's mission driven and they care about the communities they live in. What are the trends within the affordable housing world? We have not fully addressed the senior tsunami. I've been talking about this for years. We may have in this state misbuilt senior housing from 20 years ago, not getting ready for this, but we're starting to change that, which is lucky for us. We are not increasing the critical social services attached to many affordable housing deals. As I like to say, housing first can't be housing only. We have to make sure that our nonprofit partners working in this arena get the dollars they deserve to make sure that people are successful when they are living in affordable housing communities. We have a race to the bottom for cost. This is what I'm most concerned about and what you should keep your eyes on. There's been too much value engineering at the beginning of development deals and not at the end of development deals. We're starting with cheap instead of finishing that way. This makes affordable housing unwelcome in many communities. And a lot of communities have a right to be cynical on some of this, because are we putting in everything we need to in these communities on these development deals? Costs have just gone through the roof lately. Construction costs, building materials, land costs, and we're struggling to try to deliver low rents. And unfortunately, some of the building products out there is what's taking the hit. We have local solutions attempting to fit into the system. You know, we have employer-funded or employer-owned housing. We have cooperative housing trying to develop, but the real question is whether you can duplicate that work and rinse and repeat, as they like to say, to do it over and over again. It could be difficult. There's a local pilot debate coming because of that bill, thanks to Housing North's advocacy efforts. We've wanted this for a long time, but it's here. And how are you going to use it? You know, are all the apartment owners going to come ask you for a break? You know, maybe they will. I don't know, but this is going to be an interesting one to track. And I also want to talk a little bit real quickly about rental housing for larger families. I mean, is anyone out there really building 3- and 4-bedroom apartment communities anymore? It's interesting when I look at my portfolio at the Housing Commission, we have a lot of single bedroom units. It's great for seniors. It's great for people just starting out in the workforce. We have one property that's all 3 and 4 bedrooms. It's only 20 units though. I have 1 2-bedroom unit in my whole portfolio. So it's interesting because, Craig can even talk about this, about it's really difficult to serve small families. Yeah, but then that caused people to really run away from trying to serve larger families. And I want to put in a word because someone reminded me today about this, but, our immigrant families that want to move into this region are struggling too. We've had a number of Ukrainian families walk into our office recently. We have a good Ukrainian community, and so some of the people who've left that part of the world came here to be near their relatives and friends that they knew were here, and they're trying to see if they can find places to live. And, the Housing Commission is proud to work with 2 Afghani families in one of our developments as well, people who were able to get out of Afghanistan when we left there. People would work with the United States military. And I think it's important to think about those families in a way of whether we're going to be welcoming, and part of being welcoming is having a place for people to be. And I don't know if we're doing enough, and we want to try to do more, but when we're struggling just to get workers, housing, we got to make sure we take time to be intentional about everyone that can be coming into our community. And so I want to end this part of the conversation with what you can do, and the you being commissioners of Traverse City. And I want to ask you if you're acting with any intention, or are you just letting things happen? That's part of that market dynamic you think about. You know, it's like there's a market failure going on and things are just kind of happening. And what's your response to that, and how do you participate? I always like to tell people nothing great happens without great intention, being very thoughtful about how you want to proceed. We're not going to talk our way out of this problem, although a lot of people here who know me know that I talk a lot about this problem. But I also spend a lot of time in my day working on this problem. So, and I want, you know, we have a plan. We're trying to work that plan. I encourage you to have a plan. Is there broad-based support and buy-in for the plan that you might have? I always try to make sure that you don't circumvent the democracy side of this. You know, make sure you get the feedback that you need to. I have some suggestions for you. I want you to start thinking regionally. When I say regionally, I mean the small region, the contiguous municipalities would be a great start. Having you work together would give us a strong, unified voice of elected officials where we can really start to smack down people downstate who have biases against us. You know, we're seen as a region that has it all. And they don't have, and I've been told this, they don't have a lot of sympathy for us in Traverse City. But we have real needs, and I always argue that this is a good place to bet on for this state. We have a great economy. We got great people working on the economy. Warren Call is going to be here to talk a little bit later about that, but we should support that economy with more housing so that it starts functioning even better. You should think about tomorrow. This community spends way too much time talking about yesterday, and we need to think about, you know, not our grandparents, but our great-grandchildren. Start thinking that way. And I would encourage you to just jump in the deep end, get some more information. You know, whatever data you go out and get your data, study the system, and start asking questions that you might have. I want to talk real quickly about the rehab. It's underway. We got some units finished if you want to come over and look at them. We have one that we can tour you through. We are doing this rehabilitation with the residents in place, so there's not a lot of available units to look at, but we have one. We have basically just taken us off the Section 9 platform and put us on the Section 8 funding platform. But our annual income of our residents is still around $16,000, so keep that in mind. And we have 151 bedrooms at that building. We were awarded tax credits for our senior housing project on 8th Street on the old Tebow Florist shop. But that was in June, and we still haven't closed the deal with MSHDA. They are fighting with us over parking, and they want more parking. And I might need your help to have that fight with MSHDA because it makes no sense. This community has spoken pretty loudly that they'd rather have units over parking. But if MSHDA has their way, we probably have to give up on this property because to put a parking lot in there means we'd have to give up half that building. And that makes it less financially feasible for us. We are proud of the fact that we use our other programs and assets to try to make other deals happen. And we've great partnership with Woda Cooper and have helped them with 2 deals, which have contributed or going to contribute almost 111 new affordable housing apartments and 27 million investment in our city, although with cost increases, I wouldn't be surprised if that's inching up to $29 million, but I'll let Craig talk about that. I do want to spend a few moments just talking about our transit-oriented design project, Carriage Commons on Lafreniere Road.
You may want to back up.
Yeah, I skipped it, so I'm sorry, but I can go back if you want. We have this idea that you can save money by eliminating or cutting down some of the transportation costs in families and households because you add housing and transportation costs to look at some of those budgets and some of our working families, and they're over 55% of their household costs. We're trying to find a way to address that. And imagine if you're a young couple just getting started, rent someplace where you can get by in just one vehicle and use the bus system. We formed a partnership with Beta and are developing some land in Garfield Township. Our target population is a workforce, households earning 50 to 80% of area median income. That translates to about $15 to $22 per hour, although that'll probably be going up this year when the new AMI starts to come out. This is the site plan for our side of the property. 5 building envelopes have been approved. Walking paths, 15 single-family homes that we hope to do in partnership with Habitat for Humanity. Wendy's here as well from that, and we're starting to work on an MOU to make sure that happens. There, you can see kind of at the bottom by the trees here, that's where the 15 single-family homes are going to be. That is delineated wetlands behind them, so the backyards of those homes will always have trees behind them, which is going to be kind of nice. We're going to have a daycare facility, retail cafe of some sort, and a bus transfer station. And I'm sure Chuck Korn is going to make me do this. I've promised a bird watching platform, and I will have to put that in there at some point. You know, we're
Will there be
calling
a
this
playground?
Yes, we're going to. We've been calling this the center of it all because we believe, you know, with the population center in this county is in Garfield Township. The opportunity zone is there. You know, we believe that this is going to be a great place to get to all the job centers in this region. And you can see kind of the map of how the buses will run from there on a daily basis. You will be able to get the first bus in the morning out of Beta and the last bus at night coming home. I do want to point out, even Garfield Township has given us a break on parking. They went from their 1.5 requirement to a 1.1. That means less asphalt and more green space. This is just some of the pictures of that. Phase 1 is 106 apartments, and we're still working on trying to get that happen. There's a daycare facility, cafe, retail. Our partners, Smith and Hinsey, affordable group out of Florida, they've worked with public housing doing projects like that, and they also had a lot of experience with opportunity zones, and they won the RFQ when we put that out there, and they've been working with us ever since. Their vice president grew up here, so that was how she just did a cold call, got to meet us that way, so we were able to make that happen. I point this out, you know, if you look at our project overall, almost $3 million in site costs and site work budget. This is a big project, and we're trying to find ways to cover those costs all day long. We were lucky to get $6 million from the state in their budget appropriations in the end of June last summer, at the end of their fiscal year. But that $6 million is going to be used for gap financing in a couple of the buildings. We're still tight everywhere else, but we want to certainly thank elected officials everywhere for voting that in. We are learning that we still need a lot of support from the community, and including you. This is not in your community, but it's going to benefit, you know, a lot of people in this town as well. Thank you. Any questions? Are we going to wait?
Tony? Yep. Okay, no, I'll wait till after Greg has spoken.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably want you to go back to a slide.
All right. I'm here all night.
I'm not, but that's okay.
Second show at 10.
That's when Richard's definitely out at 10.
Yeah, that's past his bedtime.
He's got a lovely wife come home to.
We have Craig Patterson as Senior Vice
Yes,
President.
sir. Good evening, everyone. Mayor, Commissioners, Craig Patterson. My apologies. I was planning to be there, but a neighbor got very sick. I needed help and get him over to the hospital. But I look forward to a time when we can get together. Together at a round table. I want to first thank the city staff, city commissioners, and the mayor for everything you've done to support us as we have long and right side. And with that, I also want to thank we do speak together and share information because we all together work housing solutions in the city and more discussions. I wanted to talk a little bit about just challenges. You know, like you all know, in previous meetings, we're very what we do, strictly housing housing tax credit funding is the primary way that we are able to fund our projects. And with that, as Tony alluded, there's a lot that goes into it. Due diligence is extremely important in this whole quest for the right side. You know, we'll start looking for sites. As many of you remember, it took us about 5 years to get a site that scored and when Traverse City. We spent 5 years looking at multiple sites, several applications that did not win. And those costs, due diligence costs that we must bear at the owner level in order to bring an application to market. Is there a question? I heard some.
Cough.
No.
Okay, good question. So we must be very precise in what we do. And our budgets are very tight, as you can imagine. Tony alluded to that. But the biggest issue we really have, is the unknown. In the last 2 years, 2.5 years since COVID came upon our nation and the world, those unknowns have increased significantly, caused delays in development and construction, and the costs have skyrocketed. Tony alluded to that, he mentioned his projects. But the one thing that is good that has been helpful is like in a city like Traverse City, I can only think of one cost that I know of that has gone up, and it was insignificant, and that was the pilot application, which really wasn't that significant of an increase compared to the other increases we're facing when it comes to our phase ones, our market studies, our title work, our geos, geotechnicals, and everything, costs that we must bear before we submit an application. I mentioned we start sites usually a year ahead of time. There's a lot of internal and indirect costs in that. We have a team back in the main office in Columbus that does a lot of searching. We will contact owners directly, unlisted sites, referrals. We like to work with communities that have sites under control and have been earmarked. Generally, there's an RFP that goes out and will screen potential developers that develop experience. There's usually a scoring matrix with your pilot applications to sort out whether you want to give a pilot to a specific group. But wherever there's a community that has sites that are affordable housing, that's a plus. When a community has a master plan that mentions affordable housing, low to moderate income housing as a priority, that also helps when it comes to actually going for support with ISHTA to receive funding. But the areas that we look at in the community will be areas just like Tony mentioned, one of the windfalls in the bittersweet your community are the high AMIs, the 88,100, which the area income, which means that the MISHDA rents can be higher as well than some of your neighboring counties which have lower AMIs and consequent rents. One of the criteria that we look for also not only earmarked sites in a city like yours, but we look for shovel-ready sites, not only earmarked or set aside for affordable housing by whatever criteria you would use to select that site for housing. Some communities might say we want housing here, because we have no housing in this area of the city, or we have too much housing in another area of the city, and therefore we want to make sure that affordable housing is dispersed, affordable housing located in areas of the locality where there are jobs that are walkable, or where they're beta, like in the case of beta areas where that housing is. The other thing that helps us in communities like Traverse City, where you have a housing commission. Tony mentioned that he's helped us on 2 applications, which because of his help, the vouchers he gave, 111 more units in the city. I can't say this enough, but without Tony and his team's help, we could have never scored high enough in funding on Root Park and Onica Place. So where there is a housing commission that will work with the Light Tech Development, believe me, not all housing commissions are created equal. Not all have the ability to pull in vouchers, distribute RFP. Some housing commissions would rather keep the vouchers for their own use, their own projects. But as I mentioned before, in the case of first application, Root Park, Tony said, yeah, I'm in this business like you, Craig, Tony Cooper. And I think if I give you vouchers, I may have a problem competing against you. And sure enough, we won. But those are the positives that that's really how we build communities like Traverse City. And those components are there. The other really key is the pilot. In fact, I think you know or don't know, there's a couple ways that pilot scoring can be accomplished. And that is through a pilot abatement like you did, and sometimes through a tip or a pilot combination, the developer can get the scoring that they need in order to critical points necessary funding. I've already mentioned vouchers. There's just really no way in the rural without vouchers. There's no way to compete in the open urban pool without vouchers. And vouchers are extremely important in the permanent supportive housing. And I can answer questions on that later if there are questions on how those vouchers can play locally, so vouchers issued commission. Our budgets are tight. Our oversight committee is deep and wide. And I want to bring this up to differentiate us and other affordable high-tech district funded developers from market rate developers that come to your community. They have a whole different standard of excellence than what we have. For example, sustainability is absolutely essential. We are LEED Silver, LEED Gold, sometimes in the case of Onica Place, we took LEED Silver at 0. And that was a new criteria. It was different than what we did at Blue Park. It was something our consultant brought to the party, said that is a way that we can score the number of points we need on the mission application, and basically involves purchasing some carbon credits at first until we approve that we have the sustainability, meet the sustainability requirements of that category. So when I talk about deep and wide, we have our investors watch us carefully during clients and make sure we live up to all the promises, all the covenants that we made. And they want us to do that strictly because their money is on the line. Second of all, we have Vista, not only the multifamily group that watches over us, but the clients group watches our management group and makes sure we're following criteria when it comes to managing the property and taking care of our customers, their residents, our tenants, Vista's customers as well, because they are in the affordable business. We also have lenders, whether it be a construction lender or a farm lender, and then in the case when there are vouchers, there's HUD that is watching not only the Housing Commission, but also us, make sure that we comply with the targets when it comes to MDE and WDE. And in the case of Blue Park, we also have the state watching us in terms of prevailing wage. So we have a lot of masters that we have to be careful that we satisfy everything. And that's what makes it more difficult for a LIHTC developer like Lord Cooper and others like us, like Tony, the Housing Commission. It makes it really difficult for the full 15 years of clients. We have to be very careful, or we mess up and we may never get another application for affordable housing in issue. In general, given all the criteria that we have to have before an application, it's not unheard of for us to routinely we'll spend $35,000 to $50,000 of our own money to prepare an application. That's if we're first time in first market. We have to have additional market studies to make sure we're in the right market before we pay the $6,000 for the full market study. Excuse me. So that's what we have to bear in terms of cost. In case of Root Park, we went in 3 times. It wasn't 3 times 35 to 50, but it was approaching 6 figures. Our investment before we got managed LIHTC more. One of the things we've been able to do in recent years that for Root Park and more so in Annika Place, we were able to stretch the rents in the 70 and 80% line, meaning the income stretched to 70 to 80%. In the case of Annika Place, we were able to 63% of our units, and there was higher income bands, which obviously broadens the net. We can bring in more singles, more families, more seniors that will qualify in this housing, which we believe is superior to our system requirements and construction design criteria that is required of us for mission. I think it's superior to some or much of market rate housing. Now, I'm talking on a broad basis, that's picking on any market rate developer in Traverse City, but what we have seen in the 16 states that we operate, the HFAs or the mission equivalent design criteria and the Section 42 IRS requirements that come from the federal government, meaning that we build a product that lasts longer, is more sustainable, and is more amenity, well, has the type of amenities that singles and singles have. Stay there, live there, retire, or live in place until they are called beyond this earth. Tony mentioned a couple of things we're concerned about, the race to the bottom. One thing I can tell you, he mentioned 1s and 2 bedrooms. At Brookside Commons, which is our 72-unit housing project up in Garfield Township at Long Lake and Zimmerman Road, we have a wait list for it. 1 bedrooms of 250 individuals and that's 1 bedrooms and 175 individuals. The wait list for our 2 bedrooms. Our 3 bedrooms, our wait lists are manageable and much lower. I wanted to give you a quick update on Moon Park. We are 80% complete. We'll start leasing sometime by the end of May or June. Pre-marketing should be starting in a moment now. Monica Place is 5% complete. Got our footers in, we've got some weather delays. Within the next month, you'll see all the towers going up, the staircases, the elevator, and we think our underground will be infrastructure 5% complete. With that, I think I will, among the others on the panel, answer any questions.
Okay, we heard. Tony, I need you to go back to one slide. Don't mind.
Wait, can I ask Craig a question before he's off
Oh,
the
yeah.
screen?
Okay, that's
Sorry,
fine.
it's a little interesting with logistics, so I'm going to ask you a quick question, Craig. It's really more of a request because I don't expect you to have it on you right now. But right now, we're talking about electrification as a city policy, including anyone who would get a pilot from the city. So I'd just be curious to get numbers from you on what that would look like. You can use a current project, like let's say that had been in place with Annika Place, how that would change the numbers if you'd had a heat pump there or some of the other factors that might be. Please do not feel like, actually I should say, please don't answer now, but I'd like to see those numbers, if you could get them to us either after this or if we do another
First of all, I
summit.
appreciate the question because it came up to me recently. Is there any chance that Annika Place we could look at electrifying heat? And to date, we have been exclusively natural gas in the state of Michigan. And it has been a preference group that remain that. There's some new data came out, Tony gave me some data, and I looked at closely at the utility balances for electric heat, and frankly, I was a bit surprised. Traverse City Light Power, again, look at it. Electric heat.
Yep.
I sent some emails to our team, we are reevaluating.
Great, I'd love to hear more about that as you find out more.
I haven't talked to the GC yet, but I think there could be some savings construction as well by going electric as opposed to natural gas. But all that would be this week or so. Different opinion, maybe move forward.
Great, thank you, Craig. Thank you, Richard, for letting me butt in
No,
there.
no, that's great. I'm glad you did. Go back to your slide that came down that said suggestions. Keep rolling.
Sure.
Hold on.
That could happen for all you were explaining all your stuff that you're working on now.
May I say something?
Some suggestions. From your point, I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. When I heard you give a talk at the Methodist Church about 1.5 years ago.
I was preaching.
Huh?
I was preaching.
Preaching high end, not arguing. What can we do as a city by ourselves to make this thing work? Or are we just whistling in the wind other than what we're doing, taking advantage of opportunities come before us?
I don't know if you can do it by yourself.
Well, I mean, you don't know, yes or no?
I don't think you can.
Okay.
I don't think the win for the region is there with the city acting alone, or at least trying to act in concert with the other municipalities, county government, the townships that are contiguous, maybe even other county governments. I'm not sure. I think it's too easy to divide and conquer us legislatively downstate if we're not acting in concert on some level. That is on an advocacy side of things. You know, if you're talking about wanting to have your own affordable housing fund, you know, because you know the other municipalities or levels of government won't do that with you, that's slightly different. But if there's a win regionally, that's a win for the city. And I think starting to think that way is helpful. But if you're trying to develop tools, you know, I've seen municipalities, cities around the state do their own tools, try to fill gaps themselves, try to entice developers. You heard, I think Craig gave a great example of, you know, you're competing for attention of developers. You know, you don't know you're competing, but you really are. And if you're difficult to work with or delay things unnecessarily, I'm not saying you are. I'm giving examples of how they might look. They'll always be going somewhere else. And it's far better to have choice, to have a number of developers trying to come in and work with you here. I used to do a lot of economic development in large cities, and I was always trying to get that fabled urban-based grocery store. We'd meet with, you know, all the big names. And somebody finally pulled me aside and said, Tony, this company does 10 new grocery stores every year. You will always be number 11. You will always be there was always going to be a site better than yours. Always. Until we figured out that we just had to throw in some subsidy that no one else could. But that was, you know, great advice for me because I thought I could win an open market, but it just wasn't going to happen. You know, there was always going to be some other site that was easier to do somewhere else.
Tony, can I interrupt for a second? Craig, can you mute yourself? I think when other people are at our mic, it's causing feedback with the Zoom. Thank you.
I didn't know that. Well, the question is, you know, we've had this thought that maybe out there we ought to have a housing fund. Remember you telling me, you said, unless you've got 7 figures or even bigger, we're just wasting our efforts.
Well, you could tie it up. Don't have a fund that can, you know, work, you know, repetitively, do deal after deal. It's just going to be tied up for some period of time. And you do a lot of work to try to raise these monies. And if it's $200,000 a year, it's, you know, it's just not really worth it. You're going to do some small deals. That's still a good thing, but, you know, I always say, what are you trying to accomplish with the fund? Yeah. How much of a heavy lift is it to create it? Do you have land you can sell off and put that into there? That could be an easy way to do that. And then it's a revolving loan fund if that's what you want to do. But, you know, sometimes you put a loan into a deal, it's there for a long time. It could be there 15 years, you know, or longer.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of Tony while he's up there on a much more specific level? Richard's got the high-level questions there. The 8th Street parking that you mentioned, that's been an issue. I guess I would just put it out there, let us know what we can do, if it's a resolution from the city commission or something. As you mentioned, we are very serious about reducing our parking. That spot in particular is very accessible, so anything we can do to help clarify and put a exclamation point and line underneath in bold, we'd be happy to do.
It's interesting that it's the marketing department at Mission that's having a problem. You heard about the market studies we have to do and all these deals. It's not the architects, it's not the tax credit department, it's not the legal department. They're worried about the deal failing and it not being worth anything, which I think I'm astounded. I'm astounded about that. It's like, who wouldn't want to own real estate in Traverse City?
I was going to say, do we need a study then from like one of our organizations telling them how our market is, our housing market's been for the last 10, 15 years?
It's interesting on that, you know, but, you know, we're trying to work that through. But yes, we might want to maybe think about a resolution or something like that from the city commission to say that you were actually serious when you approve these rules, you know, and I know the new director at MISTA recognizes that, you know, parking is a local issue. It's not supposed to be a statewide determinant. So.
Okay.
Other questions are up. Go ahead.
Yes. Timothy.
So say we can get seven figures, or maybe not next year, but maybe in a few years it's eight figures. What are some of your thoughts on how that could be used? Like we heard earlier this evening even that our surplus is at, I think it was 29%, we have to get it down to 20%, so that's 1.6 million right there. So we said, here's $1.5 million. How could we use it in the next 18 months effectively? I'm sure there's lots of different ways to do it, but especially seeing some of those early numbers about, 80 to 120% and what that really means as far as income, and like, could we step in and help shift that down? And this is just hypothetically, but I'm usually in favor of a revolving loan fund type of thing, so it does come back even if it takes years. But are there opportunities, and does it make sense sometimes to step in if we could shift? And I'm making up numbers. I don't know that it's 80%, but say we could shift the 80 down to 65, so it's whatever's being built, whether it's WODA or you, it broadens who it's available to.
Yeah, I would buy what you want with that money. Be intentional to say what is missing, and how do we get that, and who can we entice to build that and fund them. Redevelopment money. You've heard me speak before. Some of you, the reason this is so difficult for people to understand how to do is because we're talking about such large numbers here. When you're talking about my Lafreniere project might be 50, 60, 70 million by the time I get the fifth building and all that infrastructure stuff done. We're looking at a lot of dollars there, and somebody might say, well, how can a $50,000 gift matter, or a grant, or any subsidy on that? It matters a lot when it's the first money in the deal or when it's the last money in the deal, and you're trying to close that end gap. And you can think of your dollars that way, that you're priming the pump to make things happen, or you're actually closing the deals because there might be some extra costs of things that are necessary to finish the deal. You never know, but you want to be as open-minded as possible on that. But I would be intentional to say, this is what we want. This is what we want to buy on the market. This kind of housing for this population specifically, and go get it. That's where you'll have the biggest successes. I think the community would feel rewarded with that kind of approach.
I have a question.
Nice.
Oh, excuse me. Either for you or Yarrow, I'm not sure which. So we can think about the things that we can do locally, but I'm concerned about the things at the state level that kind of stand in our way. And I've heard two things now about MSHDA that make me worry a little bit, that they haven't kept up with cities who are thinking creatively. So the refusal to finance the Lotto project because it had the dorm-style housing, when the people at Common Grounds could have rented 3 times more of those than they have in their building. That seems short-sighted on MSHDA's part. The parking, I think we're ahead of the curve on that, and they seem to be behind the curve. Is anybody working to?
Well, they're trying to change. They got a new director that started a couple weeks ago, and in their defense, I'll say this. You're trying, they have this federal rule called program integrity. They have to make sure the program applies equally across all sectors and applicants. So that is important to them. And I don't value that as much as the others, So you have to really make sure that the focus is on the people. And, the most successful developers I know care about the people they serve. And MSHDA needs to think about that as well, because what they've done is try to buy or reward the best applications instead of the best deals. They'd rather throw someone out on a technicality on their application rather than find out what a pipeline might look like serving communities that are in real need, especially when there's parts of the state that are growing significantly and could grow more and help raise, the population of the entire state. I'm not saying to abandon anyone else by any means, but, the attitude has been, well, something's working in Traverse County, Grand Traverse County. We don't need to really pay attention there, and I think that's the wrong approach. So that's changing the thinking when they visit, legislators visit. People love to be here when state staff people visit. Challenge them. get in their face. You know, say, what's up with this, you know, and make them come with justifications, you know, and I think they'll respect you in the end for doing that, so.
He just said, get in their face.
So is this something that we need to talk to our state or congressional representatives about, so that we can have a little more flexibility?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, at one of Warren Call's policy events, I asked MEDC director a blunt question: why is Garfield Township not, you know, why can't MEDC products be used in Garfield Township? Because the answer I know is it's not redevelopment ready certified, and they can't get that because they don't have a downtown. You know, and there's only a couple townships where that's a real problem in the state, but they won't get off that, you know, and they don't have an answer for why they treat that township when it is the opportunity zone, and it has, you know, more poor people live there than anywhere else in our county. So it's like, it makes no sense to me. You know? And they get tired of me asking these questions, but I get in their face.
And I can understand the reasons for why redevelopment-ready communities have the criteria that they do, but it does create something of a checkerboard scenario in areas that you have continuous urban fabric that extends across multiple municipalities, in which case Garfield Township shouldn't have to create a downtown out of whole cloth when there already is a downtown in the same urban area.
Right. I mean, their other choices were to like select a region or part of their area where they could focus efforts, but you know, everything's privately owned. They can't, you know, there's not a lot of public space for them to anchor, you know, those deals on, so it's difficult for them.
Auburn Hills and Troy have tried semi-successfully at creating, through zoning and TIF, a downtown that they can say, hey, here's our downtown, and if you walk there, it looks kind of like a downtown. Warren has unveiled a plan to create a downtown that doesn't look that downtowny, but we'll see.
Well, yeah, that'd probably qualify.
Yeah, it would.
Well, oh, yeah, sorry. I just have a question, but Tony, unfortunately for you, it's not for you. So if I can get Yarrow at the mic.
I don't want to be here forever.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you'll be back, we know. No such luck, Yarrow. So actually, I have just two quick questions for you. One, just as we think about future discussions, you said that your study will be ready in May of 2023, which is a much broader picture. Is that kind of like you'll be delivered in May 2023, or it'll be ready for prime time May 2023, or it might be more like June?
That's a good question. We hope to have the results by May and then be able to package it, shortly after.
Okay, great. And then my other question, and it kind of does go to something that Tony opened up and the general conversation we've just had. How many counties does Housing North serve?
We serve 10 counties.
And so I guess my question would be, not saying that I don't think that you all are doing a good job or that you're working on things, but there again, talking about the competition, talking about the very big difference between Traverse City and Grand Traverse County and Antrim, for example. That I know that partially comes because that's what you have to do to get funding to do the work you're trying to do. So how can we advocate to give organizations like yours a break so it doesn't have to be basically have to have a entire northern Michigan to the bridge or even beyond sometimes just to get federal funding and or state funding help for the problems we're trying to solve?
That's a good question. I mean, I think that having a regional organization like us does put us in a position to be able to advocate, regionally and get regional funds. But I also do think that each county, and municipalities should think about how they can focus on their own housing goals, and funding as well. So I think, we work both locally with our Housing Ready program and trying to, provide that technical support and meet the units of government goals for housing, but I think also, us being regional, there's just different access to funding. So the housing needs assessment is county by county, but we will get data for all of the municipalities within that county. It's just that to be able to package it for each township or city puts a lot of added costs. And so the funding we got for this project will cover the countywide assessment, just like our target market analysis. But we can offer, like if Traverse City is interested, the consultant will work specifically with Traverse City at a discounted rate because he's already doing the work to package it. But over time, I guess I could say we could package the data that's coming for Traverse City. It will just take our staff more capacity.
No, that's actually good to know that there is that add-on, because I know that's what most consultants do, right? Like, whether it's a specific project within an area or a large 10 county, that they'll always be willing to help with the next steps, but it does have a price. And so I think that's good to know, and that's certainly something I would not object to paying. But I think that's a good thing to have out there so the public knows too, because I think sometimes when a contract comes out of nowhere, people say, well, they're just trying to bilk us for more money, but it's, everybody's on limited staff, including you all, including us as a municipality. So I think that's great to have as part of this conversation too, so people know what to expect.
Yeah, and I would also add, that we can, I think it would be valuable to the city, and we can also work on ways that it would make sense and gather more specific data to meet your specific add-on needs, if it's short-term rentals, if it's looking at affordable, housing, if it's looking at, other details. So that's kind of the point. So please fill out the survey if you got it.
Yes.
That will help us know you want to engage, and then we can work with you on that.
Thanks, Earl.
What time? Your turn.
I actually have a follow-up question to that, which is that, and perhaps you can't answer this at this point, but I'd be curious what the interest is from our surrounding municipalities about those add-on studies, because as we know, we are one small part of this puzzle, and we are surrounded by a lot more developable land than what we have in city limits. So I would like to, I'm hopeful that our surrounding municipalities are interested in what could be put together for them, and if you have suggestions about how we might be able to encourage collaboration, I think that's another important piece of what we're discussing for our immediate vicinity, smaller than the 10 counties, but our Grand Traverse, Leelanau County, Garfield Township, Elmwood Township, East Bay Township. We have some, I think, opportunities that we could be doing some economies of scale.
Yes, and I also should add that the part of the reason to ask units of government to participate is to keep that line of communication open. So as we update the data every year, we can hear from you. We'll have that relationship and be able to kind of keep a regional housing database in a way that we haven't really been able to do in the past.
Thank you.
I'm not especially knowledgeable about this, so I may not say this correctly, but I'm really happy about the work you folks did on that last package of legislation, particularly the pilot. But somebody said tonight, I don't remember who, is everyone going to be applying for a pilot now? And I'm wondering if you are also involved in lobbying, or if this has been discussed about some sort of sliding scale for taxes when you're in an area like this, where even if the developer wants to build workforce housing, really just can't make the numbers work. And if they were to have a deed restriction that said in perpetuity, this is going to be workforce housing, is there some look at a sliding scale for tax appraisals?
I wouldn't say we're looking specifically at that. We are looking at different ways we could levy opportunities to fund housing regionally with either housing authorities or ways that you could do, say, a millage, or look at ways to put money into a fund and not be just a whole county. We're also looking at ways that you could do a real estate transfer tax, just ways to put money locally into a housing fund. The other thing that we've been talking about, and this is through the Housing Michigan Coalition, but also hearing from our constituents, to look at a principal residence exemption that would lower property taxes for those providing year-round rental housing. Those are a little more tricky to get past Treasury right now, and there's a lot of questions, but we're looking at ways. So anytime some of the bills we propose do take money from the school taxes, that's where we kind of have some rub right now, but we'd love to learn more and hear from people about what would be more legislative opportunities for our region specifically. But I don't think, I haven't heard about a sliding scale. Maybe somebody else.
No. Yeah,
and I'll look into it.
Yeah, because it is tiring to hear we just can't make the numbers work. We have to do short-term rentals.
Yeah, any way we
can,
help incentivize more year-round housing, we're looking into, particularly if the property taxes are a burden.
Right.
And that is one reason they would convert.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor.
Yes.
I'm thankful that Deputy County Manager Chris Forsyth stuck around for the longer part of the meeting, so thank you, Chris. That being said, I thought it was important that we are working with the county on several different partnerships, specifically with Brownfield on a number of projects. The land bank, the PACE program, we spell out and let people know and be aware of. And we're working on a couple of other projects. But we did find out just in this last week that with the governor's announcement, some additional funding sources coming down for housing, that there may be some monies for some additional planning. And so that was something that I know that we're going to be looking at for targeting. Because as you can see, there's a lot of activities out there, public, private, nonprofits, structural government agencies. to coordinate any of these is a challenge, and they are all different and unique. I look at the Common Grounds across the street. What a unique model, but it's built. It's exciting. So I am thankful that the county is at the table at this point and continuing to work with us. And I know that Chris, we've been talking as well as with Warren Call. Warren and Travis Connect has stepped up to help work with the Grand Traverse County EDC and the city in regard to helping, attempting to work with some of our nonprofit partners and other profit partners on the EDC funding tools that we have available to us as well. And I just wanted to make sure you were aware of those activities ongoing as well.
Or any other, yes.
Just a comment, kind of a follow-up to my colleague next to me here. And correct me if I'm wrong, those that were in the ad hoc meeting earlier today, but our city attorney, who's working with her cohort at the state level of attorneys, drafting pilot ordinances for local municipalities. And I believe she said they will have something quite soon, within the next few weeks, as far as a draft to share with us, which is encouraging.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the hope, so. But of course, those were attorneys talking, you know, when you start getting them all together, you never know.
Yeah, but it's Lauren in charge, so I have a lot of faith.
Oh, yeah.
She keeps people on task.
Yes, we'll let that go. Any other questions for this panel? I appreciate you being here, but I think there's still going to be more to come, but just stay tuned because I know this community is serious about it, but, you know, it's just getting into the implementation gets to be the tough part. I'm pleased that this commission and previous commissions have taken those opportunities that when WODA comes in or others that want to look at some opportunities, we do give it serious consideration. We do go through it, and we appreciate the partnerships through that that's been conducted, including with Tony and your group. We still have more. I mean, one other part we still haven't talked about yet while we're talking about affordable housing. I'm going to say it because, you know, people don't want to talk about the thing that's behind the refrigerator. We still got to talk about homelessness and those folks too. And I know there's hopefully an effort that's going to be coming forward in the next couple of months about how we deal with some of those issues. And I'm looking forward to that activity also because, you know, that's still out there too. So let's don't forget those folks either. Thanks. All right. All right. Well, Warren, I'm glad you hung around. Anybody else got anything? Well, I'll open up for public comment if someone's got to say. I forgot to do that. So anybody got something they would like to give? You know, we got 3 minutes. Or I thought you were just getting up to stretch for a moment. So.
Thank you. Good evening. My name's Connor Miller. Oh, do you need to read the rules?
No.
Okay.
You heard them first.
Don't violate.
Good evening. My name is Connor Miller, Government Affairs Director with Aspire North Realtors, which is located in Traverse City at 852 South Garfield Avenue, and I am a Garfield Township resident located at 890 Boone Street. So I'm here representing Aspire North Realtors. We are appreciative of the Traverse City Commission as well as the Traverse City Planning Commission's continued focus on housing, and I would just like to offer our Realtor Association as a resource and a partner as you continue your housing discussions and actions to increase housing attainability in the Traverse City community. Our local association, through our three-way agreement with Michigan Realtors and the National Association of Realtors, is well versed in the great need for housing at all levels, not only in Traverse City but across the country. This is best articulated in a report completed by the Rosen Consultant Group in June of 2021 for the National Association of Realtors, entitled Housing is Critical Infrastructure, Social and Economic Benefits of Building More Housing. It calls for, among many other things, addressing large shortages in capital and lending for the development of affordable housing by expanding resources and maximizing the potential of existing programs, encouraging the responsible elimination or reduction of hurdles that prevent or delay building, particularly density limitations, like upzoning existing residential areas, eliminating minimum lot sizes, rezoning commercial sites to accommodate residential construction, implementing density bonuses, reducing parking requirements, adapting fast-track review, and by-right development. Also addressing the national underbuilding gap through a coordinated approach to planning, funding, and development of all forms of infrastructure to not only build more housing, but also build better housing, as was mentioned by Tony and Craig today, that will be more inclusive and well integrated into local communities. All of this is to say that we have shared goals and shared objectives for attainable housing development in the Traverse City community. And we have financial and technical assistance available to help with just about any efforts to increase housing availability, attainability, and affordability. So please bring us to the table. We're here to help. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thanks, folks. Thank you for being here with us. Okay, we're down to our last presentation. That is Traverse Connect, going to give us their annual report and take it from there. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Warren Call with Traverse Connect. Very proud to have our business and our operation here in Traverse City, as well as I am a city resident. I want to talk to you tonight a little bit about some of the things you've already heard about. And in fact, what I'm excited about is that we're here to offer our support and our work to reinforce some of the experts you've already been hearing about in order to address some of the problems and hopefully be part of the solution. So thanks for letting me back clean up. I appreciate it. It works out well. You have previously received our annual report via email, I believe last week, and then several weeks ago, actually a little bit more than a month ago, got the report of the contractual obligations and deliverables that we provided to the city through the last contract that we had with the city. What is before you today for this study session is a proposed updated professional service contract outlining a scope of work. And that scope of work I would put in three categories. Two of those areas are continuing work that I believe we can show has been successful over the last year and a half of working together. The third area is new, and it's a tailored and focused approach that involves housing, which you've heard from a lot of experts about already this evening. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But again, the punchline here is you've heard from several people that are experts on housing about some gaps that we have, some solutions we need to find. And what we're here to offer tonight is to be part of that solution and to support those partners and the city and other municipalities in the region for addressing those issues. I think that there's an opportunity to leverage some of the new tools that you've heard about already. And really, when you think about it, every community in this region, every community in the state, and frankly, probably most regions in every state of the union have a challenge with housing, specifically workforce housing and affordable housing. And so this is something that is obviously not unique to us. It does play out in unique ways here. But we're not going to be able to solve everything right away because it is such a dynamic issue that impacts every community. But I do think there's an opportunity for Traverse City and for the Grand Traverse region to set the example. We've successfully done that in other ways. We've successfully done that with implementation of policy that serves as a model for the rest of the state, and I think we can do that in this scenario as well. So that's what I'll be mentioning, and I will be brief. I know you've had a long night, and certainly can take any questions. But the proposed professional service contract that's in the packet today, if I could focus specifically on what's page 10 of the packet, and it's page 2 of the actual professional service agreement. In partnership with the city administration, and we've worked at tailoring one section of this contract specifically to address many of the things you've already heard about tonight. Much like the previous contract, there was a tailored section that was specifically focused on industrial site selection. In addition to some more broad areas, what we're proposing here is to continue those broad areas that the previous contract included, and then to have this tailored approach for the housing-specific needs. So I won't go through everything that's in the wording here, but I want to highlight a couple of things. Number one, we're not at Traverse Connect, we are not housing experts. But we do enjoy our role, and I think play an effective role in supporting the people that are, that you've already heard from tonight and others in the community that we're here to support and work with. So we believe we can be part of the, I guess, the solution for finding where to go and how to frame this conversation, and more importantly, how to frame the solutions that we need to address. And specifically the implementation of some of those solutions. So what you have in section 2 on page 10 is number 1, a regional workforce housing recommendation and implementation plan. It goes through a lot of detail, but number 1 is to convene many of the parties you've already heard from, as well as those other parties that need to be part of the solution, other municipalities in the region and state agencies that need to be engaged. So working with the county and the specific tools that they have, the county's Economic Development Corporation and the county specifically. As Tony earlier mentioned, for a second year in a row, we've had the acting director of MSHDA here at our policy conference in Traverse City to hear from him, but more importantly, so he can hear from all of you. That question that Tony referenced, he brought it up to both the MEDC president as well as the MSHDA director, because they were sitting at a conference table in Great Wolf Lodge, not realizing that all of the programs they had just talked about didn't apply to Garfield Township. So that's why we brought them there, to specifically hear from all of you. I also think that it's important that if you think about because of that and other things, I think that we're hopefully getting more traction with MSHDA and other state agencies to hear our voice. And again, to one of Tony's other comments, if we're able to do that with regional voice, it's even more powerful. So that's part of what I think we can bring to bear here. And I do think that we will hopefully see soon a louder voice with MSHDA and other state agencies, and we're working on that. Specifically to the advocacy things, obviously our role here over the last year has been to support the Housing Michigan Coalition, and locally, Housing North being the lead on that. You've seen that joint voice be successful in implementing policy, or at least advocating for the implementation of policy. And I think we can do that also with executing on how we implement these solutions. Part of that convening is to incorporate the studies and reports that Yarrow spoke on earlier, to make sure that the data is there. I also think there's an opportunity to benchmark some communities that have done this well. We can be one of those here in the state to do it well, but there are places that are experimenting. So if you look at, for example, what Telluride is doing with Telluride, Colorado, they have some of the same tourism pressures that we have. They have some interesting solutions. I'm not saying that's the only one, but that's one example. Victoria, British Columbia has some interesting solutions. Some things that we can look at, benchmark against, and see if we can implement here. And then not only benchmarking those solutions, but then outlining them specific to our region and how we can go about addressing our issues and finding solutions that overcome those barriers. And to some of their questions, it involves using these new tools. It involves potentially local incentives. It involves addressing policy changes at the state and local level. And I do think there may be, to your point, Commissioner, there's potentially some interesting and unique and sometimes difficult trade-offs between tax revenue and policy. And I think we need to explore those things and look at how we develop tailored solutions that we can then begin to execute here locally. So that's the section that is new in this contract that we're proposing for this year. And hopefully you would see that it supports the partners that have already spoken and how we go about implementing solutions and developing those solutions. Again, it's not a silver bullet, but I do think that we can be a model community that sets an example for the rest of the state in addressing these tough challenges. So that is the section on housing. Now the continued section, we have hopefully you've seen it in our materials, we've really got a lot of good traction and success in our entrepreneurial marketing and our talent attraction efforts. We would ask for your support that we continue that. The Creative Coast Job Board, as one example, is now nearly at 2,000 job views per month, and that is driving job applications for our local companies from across the country. The biggest views of that job board are from the East and West Coast, and we know that people are moving here because we've helped them successfully find jobs and engage in the community. So we'd ask for support on that. The utilization of the additional recruiting and placemaking resources that are part of that program are well used and heavily utilized. So we believe there's a role to continue that placemaking and marketing program and messaging program. And then the third area under heading C that's a continuation is the broad economic and community development service contracting that we have worked with your staff and administration and you as the commission on business retention and expansion, the attraction of new businesses, the development of industry clusters that we believe can serve as economic diversifiers and business attraction incentives for companies and organizations to locate here. Specific tailored projects as it relates to business expansion or retention, such as the Lear Corporation's recent announcement that we've been involved with. That's one that I want to touch on specifically because even with 79 new advanced manufacturing jobs here in the city of Traverse City, if you look at some of the numbers that our housing partners shared recently, advanced manufacturing jobs are kind of the key thing that most people in the state are trying to generate more of. But even those jobs are in the low to mid $20 an hour range. So when you think about that compared, and those are good jobs, really good, solid jobs with good benefits. But if you look at that compared to our housing issue, even those advanced manufacturing employees are going to have some struggles here. So it just reinforces the needs that we have. Because, landing a development and expansion project like that is fantastic and it's great news, and I think it's positive, especially when it's in an advanced and progressive aspect of manufacturing industry. But you've got to house the employees too. So I think that there's an opportunity here to work together. I'll pause there. The contract that's before you does have the same compensation level at $50,000 that the previous one did, and it is for 1 year, assuming if we were able to come to an agreement, it would be from April through March through February of next year.
Anybody have any questions?
Not so much a question, just a skeptic, which I am sometimes, could see this specific to the housing and think, well, why should we, like, we know housing's an issue, we just had people speaking to us, so why should we be paying you $50,000 to help convene some study sessions? Because you're already at the table, right, talking about housing with our broader community, trying to advance housing and such. I mean, I could come to your board meeting and make a pitch, why don't you pay the city $50,000 and we'll help provide more housing in Traverse City? So that's the like, you don't need to define it or defend it here right now necessarily, but I'd like to hear better. I think the public will want to hear better. Like, why does this make sense? Like, we hear we need more money into housing. How does spending money to Traverse Connect really help us get more housing?
So I think a good question, and I appreciate the healthy skepticism. I think that it's important that we aren't proposing new money on top of what's already being spent. And I also think it's important to highlight that most of the contract is focusing on the broader programs that you've already been supporting, and I hope you see are valuable and have been successful. As we look at as I discussed with the city manager about what should be a priority going forward for the smaller aspect of this contract that is more tailored, this seemed to be the issue where the most all-hands-on-deck help was needed. To some of the comments that were made earlier, we have a housing advocacy group that is very strong and has done an excellent job. You've got a housing commission that has a lot of good things. But one of the things that we hope to be able to help in that arena is by supporting those organizations to get to implementation. What are the specific solutions? Tony had some suggestions, for example. How do we take suggestions, develop them into actual solutions, and then start implementing it here locally? So that'd be where we would try to.
Not only for the city, but regionally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we certainly want to continue to be that convening organization and kind of arm twister as it relates to regional collaboration and getting more state support for our unique needs.
And if I can actually find, it's interesting to hear Commissioner Warner's comment, because when we first had this discussion, we went into our first contract with Traverse Connect, one of the key items that we talked about that I know, and I remember this because it was one of the things that sold me on it, was that you all were getting more involved in the housing aspects. And what the problem we've had, and we somewhat continue to have in various ways, is sure, the city can do that. We can tell everybody we're hosting it, and no one shows up to the table because everybody has their own people involved in everything. And so does the county want to come, and I'm not, again, saying this because it's the largest body. I'm not trying to pick fights with the county tonight. But Chris is there. He's a very lovely man. I'm not doing that to him. But, you know, we can say it all we want, say, county, come sit with us. You know, Chuck over in Garfield, come sit with us. They can all say no. Everybody is somewhat territorial. We don't always want to go play in somebody else's sandbox either. We don't necessarily want to go to East Bay to talk about housing issues when Garfield is doing more of a heavy lift. So I think that having you all kind of step into the role that I've been hoping you would, or starting to, is a really good move, especially now. The big difference is more local governments have gone into contracts like ours. We were the first ones to do it purposefully to set the example, and I know now that you all have worked on bringing others along with that. So I'm excited about that prospect. There is no, I don't think there is a magic bullet that's going to get everybody at the table, come up with one giant solution in, you know, a couple days and hammer it out. That's just not how things work because everything changes too much. But as the representative on the board, I will say that I do know, and what Warren just said is true, that Yarrow and the team there and others were advocating very much for those changes down in Lansing, but Traverse Connect was also encouraging members to voice their support of it as well. So there is, you know, there's that point that I think was Tony was making, that we can be easy to ignore up here. We've got a good / we're not the biggest economic driver, you know, Southern, we know we have a rivalry with Southern Michigan. So I think having organizations like Traverse Connect, different governments, and everybody involved in the housing issue makes us a louder voice and more likely to get things done. So just wanted to do a little history lesson there.
Well, and I do think that from an advocacy and outreach standpoint, I think it's important that, and Tony's absolutely right, that we sometimes are viewed like, you guys are good, you don't need help. Michigan has a growth issue.
Mm-hmm.
Michigan has a growth issue in general. It has a growth issue especially with people under 50.
Mm-hmm.
We're one of the few bright spots in the state. So they ought to be reinvesting and reinforcing and supporting everything we're doing, because the west side of Michigan and northern Michigan is where the future growth is positive and happening. And I think that's an argument that I think we collectively as a region can make.
I think one of the things that I remember when you started Traverse Connect, when you came in there, we looked at how we're going to get more families in here, how we're going to get the families in here to be here. But even back then, you made it quite clear, housing is always going to be the issue, how we're going to deal with that. You made it clear then, and now that you are going to be one of the focuses to support those folks that are in that business to move the needle. Here you're trying to start working and breaking down those silos, a township, a city, a county, this task force, that task force, this agency, that agency. If somewhere or another you can help break down the silos and find ways to move all these people together in one direction instead of having this group come this group, and you can start making those inroads over a year's period of time, I don't suspect that you're going to come up with that magic. You're going to come in here with a white hat and a white horse next year and say, look here, we fixed it. No, it's going to. This didn't happen overnight. I don't expect it to be resolved overnight, but I'm glad to see, or at least I feel like, you're going to get into the game that they'll come and meet around your table a lot faster. They're going to come and meet around our table. And we all got to play together.
Well, certainly we want to serve as that that jump start to really to get things moving in the right direction whenever we can.
And of course, you're just going to have to deal with Tony as he gives his 2-hour speeches, but that's okay. That's always good to hear. So that's wonderful.
It's good material.
Good material. So it's okay. Because the issue having to be in another spot that I'm looking at right now for a short-term period, they've got the same issues we got. Housing. Big time. So anyway, thanks.
The one thing I was going to say is the more advocates, the better. So Aspire North, great. You folks, great. Tony, great. And what we're not talking about is that I think our city government, our planning commission, all are on board. We have Housing North, we've got Tony. All of those things are in place. For me, some of the biggest resistance comes from the people who already live here. And what I would love to, Connor, you're looking for something to do? Go to neighborhood associations and talk to them about neighborhoods and how neighborhoods get better. If we do some of those things that the Planning Commission wants to do and that you are talking about, you folks talk to everybody you touch and have them talk at the dinner table about why those things matter. Because we can't do that part alone. And we have a strong group of people in this community who want to say, no, 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 no. We don't have a comparable group of people coming and saying, yes, yes, yes. I know there are people who are trying to get that together, but so far it hasn't materialized. It's so much easier to say no, and it's so much easier to be afraid of change. And so your voice and all of the voices in this room need to be amplified. And so the more people who are out there saying that, the better. And sometimes when it comes from us, when it comes from government, we're an easy target. And if it comes from other sectors as well, I think that's going to be really helpful. Because as a planning commissioner, I know that we're going to be faced with a lot of unhappy people with things that we're starting to propose, and we need help. And so we're counting on all of you to help.
Well, if I could say, hear, hear, ditto, and amen. That's exactly what we need to think about. And Tony had a good point earlier that we are competing for limited development opportunities. Developers have limited amount of capital and a limited amount of staff. So we have to
Government as well,
we
right?
have to compete for those things. There was an article in the annual economic outlook from The Economist magazine, and there was an editorial in it from the mayor of New York City, and it was talking about that issue specifically, housing policy and not in my backyard attitudes. And I can share the article with you if you'd like. The article was really well done. Now, New York City has housing issues different type than we have, right? But the concept is still the same. We have to move toward a yes in my backyard atmosphere. And we have to recognize that while the not in my backyard coalition is very vocal, they are extremely small. Because frankly, some of them, most of them, have time to show up at a commission meeting.
Right.
A lot of the people that we work with, whether it's a business owner or more importantly, the people working for them who are busy, they can't go to as many things. So you don't hear as much from them. That's where we try to be their advocate. Housing North tries to be their advocate. Others try to be their advocate so that you understand that you're hearing from the broad community that, yes, we want this in my backyard.
But I would also urge you to encourage those people that, yes, as a group, they don't have as much time and wherewithal as wealthier retirees, for example, to where they have capacity, say, hey, there's a proposed ordinance or zoning change that could make a significant difference, and if you have the time, this would be a meeting to show up for.
I agree with that. I would say, though, in addition to that, is if you hear, if you've done a study session and you're considering a zoning change that clearly is designed to reduce barriers to housing, and you get pushback, what I would say is take Yarrow's most recent study and show that to whoever you're getting pushback from, and say, here's clear community-wide support for what we're doing. And we want to, we as Traverse Connect want to reinforce supporting you when you do that.
Okay, any other questions? Anyone from the audience have a question they would like to address? No, it's okay. Well, we're going to open this up for public comment here in a minute, so, okay. Okay. We're at this point in the, on the agenda for public comment. You know, you're more than welcome to come up and share your thoughts. We probably won't respond to them because we're not supposed to, so, but that's okay. Okay, I'm opening up. The floor is yours. 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Shannon McGillivray, and I do live in Garfield Township, and I'm here as a person.
Okay.
So, a question for all of you folks who think that we don't need to have any parking spaces where we happen to live. Do any and all of you go around taking beta all day? Yay, you.
I don't have a car.
Well, but I'm saying, because I live 2 miles away from work, and it used to take me an hour to get to work. Because I had to take a bus to go to the mall, and then from the mall, I had to take a bus to where I was going. It takes a long time to get places, and everything you want to do up out there in lovely Keystone, you can't always just take the bus. So it's really hard to not have access to a car parking spot, or if somebody is going to bring my children to visit for the weekend and they have a car, where are they supposed to park if they're bringing the child to where we are? Another thing I have a question on is, I know that you're not on Lafreniere type of a thing, but sidewalks. Even on 15th Street, there are no sidewalks if you go west of wonderful Veterans Drive. I don't know why. I do know it is in Traverse City, but they have no sidewalks on 15th Street between Veterans and I think it's called Maple. Another thing is, with all these new places that you're thinking of having for folks, are they going to have access for their electric bikes, perhaps, to be plugged in their unit inside? Because that's something, I live someplace where they have 2 regular bikes, I have a bike, and the guy upstairs has an electric bike. And so for him, you know, I don't know exactly how he has it configured, but that safety factor is something I'm thinking of as far as, shall we say, what they're going to have for the fire guidelines. You know, we have to keep things 3 feet from the walls and things of that nature, and curtains. And then, too, are you folks also going to be providing for people that do have parking spaces, an electric place for your new car? Because this is not going to be just for 5 years, but this is 10, 15 years down the road. So we're all supposed to have all those electric vehicles. So will they have places for them to charge their own vehicles at night, overnight? And if so, for how many? So, and also square footage. How many square feet are these people going to be able to have in their apartment? I saw that one thing that they had where everybody was supposed to have a communal bathroom. It's like, oh my gosh, at 3 a.m, I have to get dressed, I have to lock my door, and I have to go down the hallway for the communal bathroom. Well, I understand that that was kiboshed, and thank God it was. But I'm just saying, you know, all of the little things, would you want to live there?
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much for my 3 minutes.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission? Going once, going twice.
Oh, wait.
Oh. Okay.
All right, good evening. My name is Jess Gretzman. I am a resident of Garfield Township, but my office is in the city. I am an associate broker, I'm a realtor, and I am a member of Aspire North and Travelers Connect. And I serve our community on multiple boards at the state and local level. Tonight, I'm here representing myself, as I am one of the families that Tony described. We are a military family. We moved up here after my husband got out of active duty and had that struggle. We still have that struggle to this day because it just is that thing. But I also, on a daily basis, have that same conversation with families and individuals. We, as realtors, are there on the front lines, and we should be involved in this conversation. We hear the stresses. We are there to comfort that. I have wiped away tears from clients' faces. I don't like doing that. That's not fun for me. And being empathetic, that is very hard on me to do my job appropriately. We deserve to be at the table as Michigan Realtors because we are too advocating at the state level on behalf of our clients and our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I'll give it to the commissioners. Have you got any closing comments y'all would like to make?
It's
I
cold in
hear
here.
none.
It's cold in here. That's
cold in
my
here.
comment. It's
There's
cold in
windows.
here.
Okay, I hear none.
Some of them have.
Unless y'all want to hang around, you're all more than welcome to stay as long as you want, but this meeting is hereby adjourned.
I'm sitting in the corner right next.
Richard, we'll get you back to that good conversation with your wife.
Oh, it was lively. I mean, oh, it was that's bad.
That's okay. Oh, no, I said good. I said good. I didn't take it as lively as being bad.
This is colder than 60. It's like the air conditioner.